Welcome to Wayward Writers. I'm senior literary agent and author Heather Cashman.
I'm author and writing coach Stephanie Bearce.
And I'm author and writing coach Nicki Jacobsmeyer.
Our mission is to nurture and enrich established writers throughout their publishing journeys.
We welcome all genres, age groups, and publishing paths through video podcasts, online webinars, in-person retreats, and more.
We're here to help you conquer your path.
Hello, writer friends. We're so grateful to have you with us today. We are going to be talking to Karen Chan, who is the founder of Gloo Books, and we are very excited to have her with us today.
Yes, we are.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're glad you're here. Stephanie, can you tell us a little bit about Karen?
Karen Chan is the founder of Gloo Books, a new publishing company making children's books for a more inclusive, just, and compassionate future. What started as an idea to write a single children's book turned into a larger vision to create a publishing company that makes books which more accurately reflect the world around us today. Karen is an entrepreneur and lawyer and lives in Los Angeles with her 2 little boys and her husband. And Karen, when I was reading about how you started this company and your model, I just fell in love. It's just amazing. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you were inspired to start this and what your vision is for this in the world? It's really exciting.
Yeah, thanks. I'm so glad you were excited by it. It's always really great to hear people who resonate with Gloo's mission. And yes, what started Gloo Books is that I actually became a mom. I think like many parents out there, you're reading a ton of kids' books. My oldest was obsessed with books from a very young age. It's great because it like re-sparked that joy of picture books that I remembered as a kid and for so long just hadn't re-explored that. And I have 2 little Asian American boys, and it was really hard for me to find children's books with main characters that looked like them in it. And growing up as a first generation Chinese American in the US, I just am very sensitive and aware of the fact of how important representation is for children, whether it's in books or a child's sense of place in the world. And so I went hunting for books with Asian American boys in them, and I just had a really hard time finding them, to be totally honest. And then it got me down this whole path of exploring publishing and the business of publishing and the history of it and where things were a few decades ago to where they were now and how things have slowly started improving, but I feel like we still have a ways to go. That light bulb went off in my head of my creative side, which I wanted to explore writing a children's book. And then as I did that through that process, felt, gosh, maybe I can turn all of this into an opportunity and a platform for other authors and other storytellers, anyone who has a story to tell that might not have the resources or access to traditional publishing as we know it. And that's the genesis of Gloo Books.
That's so great. And it's so brave of you to take that extra step and ask yourself, what if? And the website is gorgeous. And the book you can pre-order now, the fib. I just like giggle out loud, right? Seeing a fib as like this creature. And I think we can all relate to that even as adults. So you took on this huge challenge. And so what are some of these obstacles that you faced as a small publisher, and how have you overcome them?
Oh my gosh, I do not have enough time. Do we have 5 hours to talk about all the challenges?
There will be a part 7 of this podcast.
All the challenges and the failures, and it's par for the course for anyone, I think, who starts a business. It's just hard. It's difficult. There's so many challenges. And I think in particular in publishing, it's also very uniquely difficult because it is such a gate-kept industry. There's so little about it that's just visible to even just someone as a consumer of books or a reader. And so as someone who's just trying to figure out where they can even start, how do they even start? I mean, I get approached a lot by people who are like, I have a manuscript. How do I get this published? And I said, it's about who can advocate for your manuscript, who you know. And this is all because I figured it out because I'm in the industry. So just from the outside of how to even start it, was I was just going based off of somewhat of a common sense of how do you start any business. But I think actually being an outsider to publishing has been a real advantage for me in some respects. In other respects, it's been difficult because I've been having to knock on a lot of doors that aren't responding to me because I'm not within the industry. But in some ways, it made me look at how do we get books out to readers in a very different way than someone who probably has been in publishing or worked in publishing. And so when we first started, I immediately found out that, oh, wow, there's this thing called a distributor. You need someone to distribute your books, and oh, you need warehousing, and it's a lot of logistics and all these little pieces that you need along the way, marketing, sales. And so I heard about distributors and was like, okay, everyone said you needed one as a small publisher. And then when I found out how much they took, I was like, wow, how am I going to keep going if I have to sell a lot of books to really make that justified. So to me, I thought, why couldn't we just sell directly to readers? Why isn't anyone doing that? And I think there's some publishers that have their own sort of e-commerce site, but most publishers, I think, push readers to the big retailers like Amazon and Barnes and Noble and get them to order through their website, which makes sense because those are their customers in some way, whether it's through their own distributor or a third party, if they're doing their own distribution, or a third party distributor. So I thought, like, why can't we just sell directly to readers? So for the first few years, we started Gloo Books as a direct to consumer business, tried to find a distributor, even if they even wanted to distribute our books. We had no sort of established sales or anything. So I don't even think they would have wanted to work with us. But in many ways, what that helped us do is have a direct contact and communication with the end customer, which is usually the parent or the teacher or the librarian, and then obviously the kids that they're being read to. And that has helped us tremendously because it's just given us like that sort of connection and being able to just get feedback from people on what they're thinking, how often they're opening our emails, targeting them with ads, how well our ads are doing, meaning how well are these books resonating with potential readers, is really interesting data from a business perspective, and I think incredibly valuable. I had someone that I met who was a New York Times bestselling author, and she said when she made the list, she was so excited to hear it. She went to her publisher and was like, oh my gosh, who's buying my book? How many did it sell? I want to know everything about it. And they had not a single thing to say to her. We don't know. We just know you made the list. To me, like in a day too, when data is so available and important, it felt like that was like the right way to go. And that's actually another example of how that's helped us, is that when we first started, we got a lot of readers telling us, hey, I'm really having a hard time finding a kid's book about being mixed race. I have mixed race babies and I would love to have something like that for them. And then lo and behold, we got a submission, mostly me, about being mixed race, about the joys and challenges of being mixed race. And I was like, I think this is something I've just heard anecdotally and through our customers telling us directly, hey, we want more of these kind of books. That's just an example of why it's so important to continue to have a pulse on what your customers want and how you can grow your business in a direction that matches what they want.
Yeah. It sounds like that is definitely an advantage of being a small independent publisher compared to working with these larger publishing houses. I've had the same things happen to some of my clients who they publish their book and nobody knows how many they've sold. Nobody knows where they've sold, like what region they're selling to. Nobody knows any of that information. And it can be very frustrating for the client because then they don't know how to reach their audience either. So what are some other like advantages do you think of being a small independent publisher or working
there aren't
with
a whole lot. I would say that's one of them, what we just talked about. I'm all jokes aside, like I actually think that being a small publisher we can do things that are, I feel like, I've never worked at a big publishing company. We can do what sort of speaks to us without having to show a profit and loss statement and say, this is what we expect to make. And going through, again, all those layer gatekeepers and just trying to convince more people that, hey, this book is worth taking a shot at and taking a chance on. We're such a small operation that it's really me and two other people, and we make decisions as a group, and whatever sort of the financial stuff, the financial bottom line is not always the driver as to why yes to something. So that's the benefit of being a small press, is that you can take some of these risks. Obviously, some risks can be more dangerous for you as a small business than for a bigger entity. So that's the flip side. But we also can move a lot faster. We are with a distributor now as of this year. But before that, when we were self-distributing, self-selling directly to readers, we could just publish a book and then it was out there. We have the typical publication cycle of 6 months before any titles coming out for the fall and winter season, have to be 6 or 7 months before that, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So you were talking a little bit about how you are able to pick and choose what you'd like to publish. What makes a good product or book that's going to say, oh my gosh, this is what I want to see in our lineup? What are you looking for?
Yeah, I think based on our just mission and it's any books that are pretty mission driven are probably going to catch my eye, that have broader purpose beyond entertaining, and which books are great just for laughs and entertainment, which is why we do quite a bit of nonfiction books. I love nonfiction books.
Me too.
We agree.
Love nonfiction. And anytime that we can be teaching kids something that they haven't either, like, in a way that they had before or heard about before. So the fib, for example, is a really great example of that. It's a very universal problem that I think a lot of parents face, which is teaching your kids about lying. But the way we see this, or the Very Asian Guide series, teaching kids about culture and people through food, something so universal, something that I think welcomes people to get to know a certain culture a little bit better. So I would say that's probably, and a lot of it we look at too. What's the motivation for them writing the book? What's like the personal connect to the story that they have? That always gives me a better idea of how we then position the book and the author when we're marketing. Like, what are some of the opportunities that we can have for this book's marketing plan that just extend beyond it as just a story? So I'm trying to think.
It sounds like, and we've talked about a lot about what is your why you're writing it, why you're writing the story. So it sounds like when your why and the author's why line up together, then you've got a match.
Yes, exactly. And when the why and the story itself has a reflection as to the author's why, that's even more powerful. That's more powerful.
Great.
Yeah.
That does make a powerful book and a powerful read.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Karen, how do you balance the creative vision with the business side of publishing?
That's so hard. I'm still figuring it out. It's like wearing hats. Yeah.
Sure.
You're like, okay, business time. We had to close our books from last year at the end of January, and just accounting could not be more just mind numbing for me. So there's certain aspects of just business and numbers and operations that just have to happen, because that's what keeps the lights on and us continuing. And so what I try to do is not feel so bogged down by those tasks that feel really not fun doing. That's just part of the whole thing. And that gives us the ability to create more books, which is the part I really love being involved in. And then also on the creative side, I really tried to slow down this year. Actually, we were going at 1,000,000 miles an hour for the last 4 years, and it was just, it was too much. And part of that is you can't turn creativity on and off just, because you're like, oh, I got 1 hour and I'm allocating it to like looking at manuscripts and doing threads. Okay, we're gonna get into it. Yeah, or even just writing, right? Like, it's just, you sometimes can't just fit it perfectly within the confines of the limited time that you do have. And my approach this year for my own personal self and own personal development has really been to take a step back at trying to do it all and trying to do less, in the hopes that it gives more room for being more creative, allowing myself an hour or two to think about, all right, what are we going to publish in the next season? What kind of books are we looking for? What kind of books have we not even thought of that might be out there that we would be interested in publishing? And there's just so many different questions, creative questions, both in the business sense and with the books that we are looking to publish, that need just time and space to be able to develop. And I would say it's always a struggle, but that's how I'm approaching it, at least this year.
Good for you. I feel like that,
Yeah.
like you just said, it seems like we're always in that go action mode. And sometimes the action is to stop and think. And I
Yeah.
love what you said that like you decided to slow down and you can't demand creativity. And I was thinking about this happened this morning. You got the business side of your brain and the creativity, right? And like when you're doing both, there has to be this transition. Like today, I tried to transition from business to creative, and it was ugly for a few minutes. You know what I mean? Sometimes that's hard, right? It's
Yeah,
something that doesn't necessarily always happen immediately. Great advice
exactly.
for our
Totally.
listeners. Thank you.
Have you been able to keep writing yourself and keep publishing yourself as well?
No, and that has literally been on my
Oh,
to-do list. And
Yeah.
my husband even keeps always encouraging me, you have to keep
good.
writing. And
Yeah.
I just did a reading for, I don't even know, like 100 kids in Burlingame School District. And it was right before bedtime. And I was reading my book,
Mm,
and I hadn't read it in a while. And all the kids, of course, were listening and asking all these questions. And I'm like, oh, I love this. And I just was like, I think especially when you are able to read the book
Mhm.
aloud and see people's responses, that's when the inspiration
Yes.
comes back again. It's just always ends up on the bottom kind of all the things that
Yeah.
I have to do. And I would love to be able to carve time out for that. But hopefully this year, as I'm allowing more time for creative things, I can
Do
get.
put that higher on your list.
yes.
Feed
Yeah,
yourself and your
Absolutely. I hope
readers
you
with
get
your
to.
good stuff.
Yeah.
yeah.
So, since we are talking about storytelling, how do you approach storytelling differently as a writer versus as a publisher? Or
Or do
is it
you?
the same?
I don't think
Okay.
it's different. I think it's the same. Yeah, I wouldn't say I look for things differently in terms of a
Hmm.
manuscript or a book that we're considering. And I would even say that storytelling from a marketing perspective is there's some similar
Hmm.
themes. It's just packaged in a different way. I think that's
Okay.
sort of what it is, right? You're trying to make something connect with someone, and this is going to sound so businessy, but like, what's your proposition
Hmm.
value, and how can you most effectively convey that to your audience? What
Mm.
with marketing, while simultaneously cutting through a lot of noise, since people are just
Yeah.
constantly consuming content and ads and whatnot. And so that's channels, and it looks different than, for example, a book, but you're still doing that in some way. Your resolution, your climax, and your story is going to be the sort of, I guess, value
Hmm.
proposition that you would have for why someone should buy your book in the first place. So it's
Mhm.
just there are some similarities there, but I would say in general, like between my own writing, what we look for in a manuscript, I don't know if I take a different approach. Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
That's
as you
good
said,
advice.
the publishing industry, right, is always constantly evolving. So, where do you see the future of independent publishing going?
I hope there's more. I hope indie publishers are able to thrive. Luckily, within these last few years that I've been doing this work, I've been able to meet fellow indie publishers, and we've become friends, just sharing resources, commiserating, celebrating each other's wins. It's been really amazing. And I know how hard it is to just keep that going, and from my own perspective, but then also hearing it from others. And so I just hope that indie publishers continue to grow and gain more market share and be able to put out their bold ideas that might not fit.
I so agree. I spent a lot of years in the classroom, and I just think it's so important for kids to see themselves represented in the books that they read and the shows that they watch, all of it. So I really love your mission. You're talking about diversity and representation are really central.
A lot of what happens that I've seen is that You have these independent publishers who are so fresh and unique, and they're able to do these things to take on these books that are different. And then what happens is they grow and grow, and then they get bought out, or they get, and I'm not diminishing the art or anything like that, or the value that is in big publishing, in books that are picked up by big publishers. But I do feel like, because it's a corporate run type of entity, that P&L statement is the bottom line, really. How commercial can this be? And I feel like indie publishers can do things that maybe aren't quite as commercial because their margins are so different. And so it's so valuable that we have indie publishers. I think they're so valuable to the whole ecosystem of publishing. And so we're excited that you're persevering.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Wayward Writers.
Let's connect. Find us at waywardwriters.com, X, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
See you next time. Conquer your path.